The biting wind whipped across the desolate Tibetan plateau, mirroring the chill that had settled deep within Tenzin's bones. Years. It had been years since he'd last felt the warmth of his family's acceptance, the comforting weight of their approval. He pulled his worn yak wool shawl tighter, the coarse fabric a poor shield against the elements and the memories that clawed at him. Once, Tenzin had been the golden boy, destined for a life of opulent comfort in Lhasa, groomed to inherit his father's thriving import-export business. He'd excelled at everything: Mandarin, accounting, negotiation. His father, a man whose face rarely cracked a smile, had almost beamed with pride. Almost. Then came the epiphany. During a business trip to a remote village ravaged by drought, Tenzin witnessed suffering on a scale he couldn't ignore. Children with distended bellies, their eyes hollow with hunger. Families forced to abandon their ancestral lands, their spirit broken. He saw the stark contrast between his privileged life and the desperate plight of his people, and something within him irrevocably shifted. He abandoned the tailored suits and the air-conditioned offices. He traded his inheritance for a handful of yaks and a dream to bring sustainable farming techniques and clean water to the forgotten corners of Tibet. He established the Seeds of Hope project, a grassroots initiative that focused on empowering local communities to become self-sufficient. His family, predictably, was horrified. His father, in a voice laced with icy contempt, disowned him. "You are throwing your life away," he'd thundered. "For what? A handful of dirt farmers who will never appreciate your sacrifice? You are a fool, Tenzin, a disgrace to our name." His mother, tears streaming down her face, pleaded with him to reconsider, to think of his future, of the legacy he was squandering. Even his younger sister Dolma, who had always been his closest confidant, couldn't understand. "Why, Tenzin? Why would you choose this hardship over a life of ease and security? We could have built something amazing together." He tried to explain, to convey the profound sense of purpose he'd found, but his words fell on deaf ears. They saw only the abandonment of a carefully laid plan, the rejection of their values. They saw him as a failure. Now, years later, standing on this wind-swept plain, overseeing the construction of a new irrigation system, Tenzin couldn't deny the sting of their disapproval. He missed them. He missed the laughter, the shared meals, the sense of belonging. He wondered sometimes if they were right. Was he a fool? Was he chasing a pipe dream? The work was grueling, the challenges relentless. Drought, bureaucratic hurdles, and the ever-present threat of political interference tested his resolve daily. There were moments of profound despair, times when he questioned his sanity, but then he would look into the faces of the villagers, see the hope flickering in their eyes, and he would find the strength to carry on. He received intermittent news from Lhasa, filtered through distant relatives and whispered phone calls. His father's business was thriving. Dolma was married to a wealthy businessman, and his mother, he heard, was not well. The news was always delivered with a subtle undercurrent of judgment, a silent accusation that he was responsible for their unhappiness. Then one day, a battered jeep arrived at the remote village carrying a stranger with a satellite phone and a disbelieving expression. The stranger, a journalist from a prestigious international publication, had come to document the remarkable success of Seeds of Hope. Tenzin's innovative farming techniques, his unwavering dedication, and his profound impact on the lives of the Tibetan people had caught the attention of the world. The article went viral. Overnight, Tenzin became an international hero. Awards, accolades, and invitations poured in from around the globe. His project received unprecedented funding, allowing him to expand his reach and impact even more communities. His family predictably had a change of heart. His father called, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, offering congratulations and hinting at a reconciliation. Dolma sent a tearful email, praising his accomplishments and begging for his forgiveness. Even his mother, frail and weakened, expressed a desire to see him again. Tenzin felt a surge of conflicting emotions: relief, vindication, and a deep-seated anger. He had proven them wrong. He had achieved something meaningful, something that resonated with the world. But at what cost? Had the years of estrangement, the constant struggle against their disapproval, irrevocably damaged their relationship? Could their newfound admiration ever truly heal the old wounds? He looked out at the parched land, now slowly blooming with life, and wondered if the validation of the world could ever be enough to mend the fractures within his own family. Resumo temático. Profissional de destaque, desprezado por sua família por abandonar o sucesso convencional em prol de projeto social ambicioso, vê sua iniciativa ser reconhecida mundialmente, invertendo o julgamento familiar e questionando se a validação externa é suficiente para reparar antigas feridas. The satellite phone buzzed insistently in his hand, the insistent drone a stark contrast to the quiet hum of the solar-powered water pump nearby. It was Dolma. He hesitated, the plastic casing slick with sweat. He hadn't spoken to her directly in years, only received the stilted, carefully worded emails. He answered, "Tenzin?" Her voice was thin, reedy, carrying across the continents like a fragile thread. "Dolma. Father, he wants to see you. He's not well." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Not well likely meant something far more serious. Tenzin had imagined this conversation countless times, rehearsed the sharp retorts, the carefully constructed defenses, but now, hearing her voice, all the anger seemed to drain away, leaving only a hollow ache. "What does he want?" he asked, his voice flat. He wants to apologize. He says he was wrong. He wants to tell you himself." Tenzin scoffed, a short, bitter sound. "After all these years, after everything he said, after disowning me? Please, Tenzin, he's changed. Mother wants it too. It would mean so much to her." Dolma's voice cracked. "Please, just come home." He looked out at the fields, green and vibrant where once there had been only dust. The villagers were working, their faces etched with determination, their bodies strong and healthy. This was his home now. These were his people. Could he abandon them, even for a short time, to face the ghosts of his past? "I don't know, Dolma," he said finally. "I have responsibilities here." "We'll take care of everything," she pleaded. Just come for Mother, for Father, for us." He thought of his mother, her gentle smile, her unwavering love, even when she disagreed with his choices. He thought of his father, the stern patriarch, the man who had demanded perfection and offered only conditional approval. He thought of Dolma, his childhood confidant, the sister he had lost to ambition and societal expectations. "Give me some time to think," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He ended the call, the silence that followed deafening. He stared at the phone, a cold, hard object in his hand, a symbol of the chasm that separated him from his family. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Tenzin sat by the irrigation canal, watching the water flow. An old woman, her face creased with wrinkles, approached him. She was one of the first villagers to embrace his ideas, one of the first to trust him. "Tenzin," she said, her voice raspy with age, "you seem troubled." He hesitated, then poured out his heart, telling her about his family, about their rejection, about their sudden change of heart. The old woman listened patiently, her eyes filled with understanding. When he finished, she took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Tenzin," she said, "your family may have judged you harshly, but they are still your family. You have done so much for us, brought life back to this land, but you cannot let their past actions poison your heart. Go, see your father. Forgive him if you can. Forgive yourself for any resentment you may hold. Only then can you truly be free." Her words resonated deep within him. He knew she was right. He couldn't allow the bitterness of the past to consume him. He had to face his demons, to confront his family, to find a way to heal the wounds that had festered for so long. He made his decision. He would go back to Lhasa, not for them, but for himself, to find closure, to finally lay the past to rest, to see if, after all these years, there was still a chance for reconciliation. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew he might be walking into a trap, a carefully orchestrated attempt to manipulate him, but he had to try. He owed it to himself. He owed it to his family. And maybe, just maybe, he owed it to the memory of the boy he once was, the golden boy who had dared to dream of a different kind of success. He booked the first flight out. Resumo temático. Profissional de destaque, desprezado por sua família por abandonar o sucesso convencional em prol de projeto social ambicioso, vê sua iniciativa ser reconhecida mundialmente, invertendo o julgamento familiar e questionando se a validação externa é suficiente para reparar antigas feridas. The flight to Lhasa was a blur of swirling clouds and gnawing anxiety. Tenzin found himself strangely detached, observing his own reflection in the window, a gaunt face etched with lines of hardship and a weariness that seemed to seep from his very soul. He barely touched the bland airplane food, his appetite choked by the anticipation of what awaited him. Lhasa had changed. The city, once a familiar tapestry of ancient traditions and bustling commerce, now felt alien, dominated by modern structures that seemed to mock the humble simplicity he had embraced. The air, once crisp and clean, was thick with the exhaust fumes of countless vehicles. He felt a pang of homesickness for the pure, untainted air of the plateau, for the comforting silence of the mountains. Dolma met him at the airport, her face pale and drawn. She rushed towards him, her embrace tight and desperate. "Tenzin, I'm so glad you're here." He hugged her back, feeling a flicker of the old affection, but it was quickly overshadowed by an awkwardness, a sense of distance that years of separation had created. "How is he?" Tenzin asked, his voice strained. Dolma's eyes welled up with tears. "He's weak. He doesn't have much time." The ride to his family's home was silent, punctuated only by Dolma's occasional sniffles. The opulent house, once a symbol of their family's success, now felt like a gilded cage, a monument to the values he had rejected. His mother was waiting for him, sitting in a plush armchair in the living room. She looked frail and diminished, her once vibrant eyes now clouded with age and illness. When she saw him, her face lit up with a weak smile. "Tenzin," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You came." He knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. Her skin was thin and papery, her grip weak. "Of course, Amma, I came." He spent the next few hours by her side, listening to her stories, reminiscing about their shared past. She spoke of his childhood, of the dreams she had for him, of her pride in his accomplishments, both the conventional and the unconventional. She didn't mention his father, but Tenzin could feel the unspoken tension hanging in the air. Later, Dolma led him to his father's room. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of medicine and decay. His father lay in bed, his face gaunt and pale, his eyes closed. He looked like a shadow of the man Tenzin remembered, the powerful, imposing figure who had once dominated his life. Dolma gently shook him awake. "Father, Tenzin is here." His father's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Tenzin with a mixture of surprise and something else, something Tenzin couldn't quite decipher. Regret, shame. "Tenzin," he croaked, his voice weak and raspy. "You came." Tenzin nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yes, Baba, I came." A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the labored breathing of his father. Tenzin waited, bracing himself for the apology, the admission of wrongdoing. But it never came. Instead, his father fixed him with a cold, unwavering gaze. "You think you've won, don't you?" he said, his voice gaining strength. "You think you've proven me wrong." Tenzin was stunned. "What? All this attention, all this praise," his father continued, his voice laced with bitterness. "You think it makes you a better man? You think it justifies your betrayal?" "Betrayal?" Tenzin repeated, his voice rising. "I didn't betray anyone. I followed my conscience." "You abandoned your family," his father spat, his eyes filled with venom. "You threw away your inheritance. You shamed our name." "I helped people," Tenzin retorted. "I made a difference." "A difference?" his father scoffed. "You wasted your life on a bunch of ungrateful peasants. You could have been a powerful man, a respected man. Instead, you chose to be a glorified farmer." Tenzin stared at his father, his heart filled with a mixture of anger and despair. He had come seeking reconciliation, seeking closure, but all he found was the same old resentment, the same old judgment. "Why did you ask me to come here?" Tenzin asked, his voice trembling. His father smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. "I wanted you to see," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I wanted you to see that even in death, I am still right. You are a failure, Tenzin, and you always will be." He closed his eyes, his breathing becoming shallow and ragged. Dolma gasped, rushing to his side. "Father!" she cried. Tenzin stood there, frozen in place, his mind reeling. He had come seeking forgiveness, but all he had found was condemnation. He had come seeking closure, but all he had found was deeper pain. Then, as his father took his last breath, he whispered one final word, a word that shattered Tenzin's world. "Karma." The room fell silent. Dolma sobbed uncontrollably, clutching her father's lifeless hand. Tenzin stood there, numb, the weight of his father's final judgment crushing him. He had sought validation from the world, but it had been meaningless in the face of his father's unwavering disapproval. And now, with his father gone, he would never know if he had truly made the right choice. He looked at Dolma, her face contorted with grief, and realized that the wounds of the past might never truly heal, that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt, that sometimes, no matter how much you achieve, no matter how much the world praises you, it's never enough. Resumo temático. Um profissional de destaque desprezado por sua família por abandonar o sucesso convencional em prol de um projeto social ambicioso, vê sua iniciativa ser reconhecida mundialmente, invertendo o julgamento familiar e questionando se a validação externa é suficiente para reparar antigas feridas. The word echoed in the sterile silence of the room, a final, damning pronouncement. Karma. Had he misread everything? Had his efforts, his sacrifices, been nothing more than a selfish pursuit masked as altruism? Was he truly destined to repeat some ancient karmic debt? He stumbled back, the weight of his father's accusation crushing him. Dolma's sobs faded into a dull hum, a background noise to the turmoil raging within him. He had come seeking absolution, a sense of peace. Instead, he found himself drowning in a sea of doubt and recrimination. He needed to escape, to breathe. He mumbled a few words of condolence to Dolma, his voice hollow and unfamiliar, and stumbled out of the room, out of the house, into the chaotic streets of Lhasa. He walked aimlessly, the city a blur of colors and sounds, his mind numb with grief and confusion. He found himself drawn to the Potala Palace, the imposing structure looming over the city like a silent guardian. He climbed the steep steps, his legs heavy, his breath ragged. He reached the top, the wind whipping around him, and gazed out at the sprawling city below. It was a beautiful city, a vibrant city, a city filled with hope and promise. But all he could see was his own failure, his own inadequacy. He had failed his family. He had failed himself. He had dedicated his life to helping others, but had he truly made a difference? Or had he simply been chasing a phantom, a self-serving illusion of righteousness? As dusk settled, casting long shadows across the city, a young monk approached him. The monk, no older than 20, had a kind face and gentle eyes. "You seem troubled," the monk said, his voice soft and compassionate. Tenzin hesitated, then poured out his heart, telling the monk about his family, about his father's death, about the accusation of karma. The monk listened patiently, his eyes filled with understanding. When Tenzin finished, the monk smiled. "Karma is not a punishment," the monk said. "It is a consequence. It is the law of cause and effect. Your father's words were born of his own pain, his own regrets. They do not define you." "But what if he was right?" Tenzin asked, his voice filled with despair. "What if I have wasted my life?" The monk shook his head. "Look around you," he said, gesturing to the city below. "You have brought hope to thousands of people. You have given them water, food, and a future. That is not a waste, that is a blessing." "But my family," Tenzin began. "Your family will come to understand," the monk interrupted. "Grief can cloud judgment. Give them time. But do not let their opinions define your worth. Your worth comes from within, from the good you have done in the world." The monk's words resonated deep within Tenzin. He realized that he had been seeking validation from the wrong source. He had been so focused on his family's disapproval that he had forgotten the people he had helped, the lives he had touched. He looked out at the city again, and this time he saw it with new eyes. He saw the hope, the resilience, the unwavering spirit of the Tibetan people. He realized that his work was not in vain. He had made a difference, and that was enough. He turned to the monk, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "I needed to hear that." The monk smiled. "Go in peace," he said, "and continue to do good in the world." Tenzin took a deep breath, the air filling his lungs with a sense of renewed purpose. He descended the steps of the Potala Palace, his steps lighter, his heart filled with a newfound resolve. He still had a long way to go, but he knew that he was on the right path. Back at his family home, Dolma was calmer, her grief tempered by a quiet acceptance. "He left something for you," she said, handing him a small, intricately carved wooden box. "He said you would know what to do with it." Tenzin opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was a single seed. Not just any seed, but a rare, drought-resistant strain of barley, one that his father had been trying to cultivate for years, a seed that held the potential to transform the arid lands of Tibet. A wave of emotion washed over him. He realized that his father, in his own way, had been trying to make a difference too. He had simply chosen a different path, a path of power and wealth. But in the end, they had both been working towards the same goal, to improve the lives of their people. He understood now. His father's final word, karma, was not a condemnation but a challenge to use his influence, his resources, to continue the work that his father had started, a challenge to break the cycle of resentment and build a bridge of understanding between the old world and the new. He looked at Dolma, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. He knew that their relationship would never be the same, But he also knew that they could find a way to move forward, to honor their father's memory, and to build a better future for their family and for their people. He held the seed in his hand, feeling its potential, its promise. He knew what he had to do. He would return to his village, to his people, and he would plant this seed, not just in the ground, but in the hearts of the next generation. He would show them that even in the face of adversity, even in the face of judgment, it is possible to make a difference. It is possible to create a better world, and it is possible to find redemption, not through external validation, but through the simple act of planting a seed of hope. He would use the funding and recognition he gained to create a better farming system as well as a school. Dolma would help him run it.